character and common sense. We sure lacking common sense in our politics right now. So let's kick it off.
Well, hope you like that new theme song that's brought to you by the musical mastermind Fingers. It's just a guy I know. I really appreciate it. I love it, and I hope you like it too. But anyhow, let's get down to the nitty gritty here. You know, one of the central arguments that I think frames the red and the blue in this country is, big business versus big government. And, as a purple state, I guess I got to say medium on that. I mean, I don't really know how to classify medium business. It's big business, We're a capitalistic society. Whether or not that's right or wrong, that's what we are. And the American dream is starting with nothing and becoming a billionaire or a trillionaire. Those are the rules of the game. And if they want to pay giant salaries to the CEOs and the workers don't get anything, I don't think that's good, but that's also the way it is. I mean, it's a free market. If a company doesn't doesn't pay their workers enough, they're going to have a hard time getting workers. And then what? The CEO's going to go out and flip burgers? But, what really scares me is big government. Because the framers of the Constitution, the people who set up this country, the Jeffersons, the Paynes, the Franklins, the Henrys, Adams, Washington, they envisioned public service being just that, public service. You served. It's kind of like the military. People don't go into the military to get rich, right? That's not why you go into the military. You don't become a frontline grunt to become a billionaire. And I think it should work the same for all of our government. It's ridiculous the amount of money these people are making. And what happens is that when you're making your millions and billions off of being a public servant, you tend to do what puts money in your wallet. You tend to do what gets you reelected. And I think that's the scariest thing about big government. And then to make it look like you're doing something, you have to pass laws. And once the laws that make sense have been passed, then what do? Then you start getting into the minutia laws, the laws that really, don't really do much, but it looks good on paper. A lot of the things that's done here in California is just like that. Banning plastic straws. It's not going to change much. The real answer is that we need to spend more money cleaning up the messes that are left behind by people. And the people who are leaving the biggest messes are the homeless. I mean, in Los Angeles, 54% of emergency calls are for homeless-related issues. But they're not doing anything about that. Because unfortunately, one of the things that Democrats, especially here in California, seem to concentrate on is they want to penalize the grinders. They want to penalize the people who work the 9-to-5s. The people who work the 9-to-5s and then go home, take a nap, and go do a night shift at a 7-Eleven. That's who they want to punish. They don't want to punish the drug addicts on the streets. They don't want to punish the criminals. They don't want to punish the illegal immigrants. But they have no problem punishing you because, see, when you punish, like, the wealthy middle class, it looks like you're fighting the power. And when you excuse the poor downtrodden guy whose only resort in life is to commit armed robbery of a pregnant woman, well, then you look like some sort of social hero. You look like Johnny fucking Appleseed. But the reality is that doesn't lead to anything. We're seeing the results of that, especially here in California, these decades of these career politicians, these far left ideologies. We're seeing it take shape here. All across the globe right now, we're facing droughts, especially here in California. We get a lot of our water from other states, and we're trying to dictate who gets water from those sources. But what are we doing? What are we doing? Are we building reservoirs? No, we're not. We passed a bill something like 50 years ago to build more reservoirs, and we're not building them. The Pacific Palisades is a great example. That reservoir was damaged, it was emptied, and it was never refilled. And then you have a fire where they could have used the water, and guess what? Still empty. These people that we are electing or allowing to be put into positions of power are simply doing things to enrich their own lives. Here's a great example that comes out of the LA Unified School District. Smoking gun letter reveals LAUSD ignored dire budget warnings before approving huge staff pay raises. And who did they get this from? They got this from the LA County Office of Education. Every board member received a letter on June 12th telling them that they would face severe budget concerns if they went ahead and approved the pay hikes. But 4 days later, just 4 days, not even a week, 4 days later, they awarded huge raises up to 24% for some workers, including a whopping 14% for teachers, depending on experience. Now, the district is staring down a roughly $3.6 billion negative reserve balance by 2029, with new agreements costing about $1.2 billion per year in funds the city does not have. This is insane. Their letter that was sent out on June 12th said, the fiscal concerns detailed below are severe, and we strongly urge the board to weigh them carefully prior to ratifying these agreements. A projected negative ending balance of this magnitude is neither a sustainable operational strategy or permissible. They gave themselves raises even though they're broke. Up north, Pacific Gas and Electric did the same thing. They're asking for approval to raise rates on consumers so they could give out bonuses to their board members. That's a great example of how these entrenched people simply enrich their own lives. Meanwhile, remember what we talked about last week or the week before? How 142 something schools out of 2,500 schools got their air conditioning upgraded? You see, that's the problem. Sometimes when you focus on the important matters, it's not very newsworthy. You know, building a reservoir does not sound as sexy as building a high-speed bullet train. We got a high-speed bullet train, and we could brag about it now, but we don't have any water. And that's what they did here in LA Unified. You know, they all got raises, 24% raises. Right? That's huge. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and do the math on what that equates to, but that is a shit ton of money. But meanwhile, the schools, the teachers are still having to buy crayons. We're struggling to figure out how to feed people. We're struggling to figure out how to keep the classrooms cool in the summertime. We're going to run out of water. No plan. No, we're not going to worry about that. No, we're going to give ourselves raises. We're not going to worry about, helping students. We're going to help ourselves. They're just so hypocritical. They put it right on display. We had that big LA warehouse fire, right? Lineage. It's almost a 500,000 square foot facility, mostly refrigerated frozen food, right? And it burned. Now they're trying to get they're trying to get the permits going to start rebuilding, but Mayor Bass doesn't want to let them do that. This is her quote. It's outrageous that Lineage is seeking permits to rebuild while the disaster it created has not even been cleaned up. Oh, I'm sorry. I misquoted that. That's Isabel Geraldo, an LA City Council member, probably a DSA member. Here's Bass's quote. Lineage shouldn't even think about coming back and rebuilding this warehouse. Every day this site isn't cleaned up is another day families are forced to live with the consequences of an irresponsible corporation. I can't believe they would even think about starting the rebuilding process while they haven't cleaned up the mess they created. It's a slap in the face to the families that are forced to live with the consequences of an irresponsible corporation's actions every single day. Pot kettle? You know that saying? Does she take accountability for the fires? The fires that started while she was out on her mayoral duties, attending the swearing in of, I think, a vice president over in Africa. An irresponsible corporation. You see, that's what we were talking about at the beginning here. She has no problem blaming an irresponsible corporation. What about the government? What about the government that is allowing copper theft to just skyrocket? Now that they have gone after all of the infrastructure, ripped out lights on bridges and fire hydrants and other equipment associated with fire protection, the thieves have now moved on to climbing on roofs and removing the copper piping from AC units. And by the time they're done ripping those things apart, they can't be rebuilt. You have to get a new one. So now small businesses are having to spend tens of thousands of dollars on these failed policies, these policies of we don't want to punish anybody. Every criminal gets an excuse from the left. Every criminal has a bad backstory. We all have bad backstories. For the most part, most of us have had some sort of struggle that we could blame all of our problems on. But most of us take responsibility for our actions and pull ourselves up by the bootstraps. I've spent 30 plus years just trying to get by without resorting back to my old ways. I'm reformed. I'm not going back. I don't give a shit what my excuses are. I don't care. But they have no problem, like I said before, they have no problem blaming lineage for all of this. Lineage isn't asking for anything special. They just want to rebuild what burned down. And and Bass and her little sycophants, they're like, oh, how are they going to rebuild when they haven't even cleaned it up? Exactly. They're going to have to clean it up before they rebuild. But the permit process takes a long time, so they're getting it started now. What is so hard about that? What is hard about it is simply that the left and their voters choose to blame big business for everything without ever looking at the fact that it's big government. Big government passing all of these little fees and regulations and stipulations and cap and trade and all this other bullshit that they do that adds pennies, nickels, dimes, dollars onto the cost of goods and services. One of the reasons why California is so unaffordable is because we have to pay so much to just break ground on something. You want to build a house? That's tens of thousands of dollars before you even put up one 2x4. And speaking of 2x4s, why in the hell are we rebuilding using wood? Where is the guidance from the city? Where's the guidance from the state? We're paying outrageous insurance rates here for car, buildings, this, that, and the other thing. Why? Because it's being wasted. Why do we pay high cost of healthcare here? Because money's being stolen. Yes, sometimes they get the money back. Sometimes they don't. And they have to make up for that shortfall. It is just ridiculous. And she literally has the balls to just say, oh, this is a result of an irresponsible company. Blame the company, right? If you can't blame Trump, blame big business. Because they don't blame themselves. My brother is one of the biggest liberals I know, and all the things that we're going through right now with my mom and the crap that he's caused, he never takes any responsibility for it. I literally, before we stopped talking, I had talked to him about his therapist that he was going to. And he was telling me the things the therapist said. The therapist was literally just blaming all of his issues on other people. He's a rampant drug user and alcoholic. He doesn't see that. He made it impossible for caregivers to come by and take care of my mom. But no, he doesn't blame that. No, he says it has something to do with me trying to manipulate the will. It's just poppycock. Poppycock, that's an old one. But it's the same mentality. Don't ever take responsibility. Deflect and blame somebody else. That's what it is. And in California, the government is just about 100% Democrat. Oh yeah, there's Republicans out there, but they can't get anything through. Based just on principle, they can't get anything through. And one of the big ones is the climate change policies. And this was an op-ed, and I think it really sums up what's going on with California. California's sweeping climate change policies cost a fortune for no benefit. The science is settled, is Sacramento's answer to the climate change. And they impose a huge cost for no apparent benefit to the planet. Climate science, I'm just going to quote from this article. Climate science can tell us that the earth is warming. What it doesn't measure is freedom. How much of yours a policy is worth, or whether imposing it on you is worth the cost. These aren't scientific questions. They're political ones. And in a free state, liberty is supposed to be the default position, not something you win back mandate by mandate. California met climate change with a machine, not a single law. Cap and trade, the low carbon fuel standard, renewable electricity mandates, clean car rules, building electrification, methane regulations, land use policies designed to get you out of your car. Yeah, you know why? Because poor people should take the bus. Let's start with gasoline. In January of this year, the California Energy Commission put a low carbon fuel standard at about 17 cents a gallon and a cap and trade at another 25 cents. So that's just 42 cents right there out of every gallon of gas that you're paying for this climate crisis. Then there's an electricity bill, a 60% renewable mandate by 2030, and a 2045 target of zero carbon power that could add up to 6% to the system cost, even before it reaches your grocery bill. Because when you're charging manufacturers, transporters, and storage places more money in energy costs, they pass those costs on to the consumer. Now, the left will tell you, oh, that's the evil corporation. No, that's the way business works. It's your fees that start the snowball. Don't blame the companies for passing along the costs. What the fuck are they supposed to do? If every corporation in America went out of business, how would your life look? Are you going to brew your own beer? Are you going to produce your own TV shows? Are you going to produce your own vegetables? Are you going to get cows in your backyard? What are you going to do? What are you going to do when you live in a little studio apartment in the middle of North Hollywood? What are you going to do? Grow your food in a window box? Energy abundance itself is a form of climate protection. The people best protected from heat and drought are the ones who use the most of it, not the least. Yeah. If we're going to survive these heat waves, we need water. We need air conditioning. But here's the thing. They don't ever tell you if any of these policies are working. They tell you that importing oil from far away helps reduce California's carbon emissions. No, it's not. California's air isn't sealed off from Nevada's by some sort of glass dome. Climate change is global, but that cuts both ways. Asking what difference all of this actually makes is basic accountability, not denial. Here's the elephant in the room nobody in Sacramento wants to name. There is no moral, political, or environmental justification, none, for regulations this sweeping and this expensive imposed on a single state that accounts for less than 1% of the planet's human-made carbon emissions. If the entire world was doing what California wants to do, we would see some difference. But that's not viable in a lot of places. A lot of countries, a lot of places around the world are still developing. We should embrace clean technology. We should try to reduce the amount of pollution that we put in the air. What California owes its residents is an orderly termination, a real wind down timelines, real transition periods where genuinely needed but clear, honest exit from cap and trade, the low carbon fuel standards, and everything else on the list. Because it's not going to accomplish anything. And none of this is an accident. They want California for the rich and the people who clean their toilets. And the argument that you will get from the left is always the same. Oh, back in the 70s, you couldn't even see the streets, and we had smog days where we couldn't go to school. I lived through that. I can attest to that. California, Los Angeles used to be a smoggy ass place. I remember days when you couldn't go outside because the air was dangerous. But that ended by the 90s. That was fixed before this militant green movement took hold. Catalytic converters, just more efficient engines, better gasoline. What we're doing now is just completely ineffective. And they're doing it to please the people who put them in power so they could stay in power. And the worst is that the real burden falls on the lower income groups. The top of the pile simply increases their prices or fees. Can you increase your pay? Can you vote to give yourself a raise to keep up with all this? You just believe in this ginormous government. California brags about it standing as the fourth biggest economy, but 20% of that number comes from government. So 20% of California's GPA is coming from government? Think about that. Did you ask these people to raise your taxes, waste them, and make life harder for you? Did you ask for expensive gas or electricity? Did you ask for bike lanes that end up clogging traffic and buses and trains that are rarely used? Did you ask for the high tax on weed? Did you sign up to waste city budgets on free needles? No. They desperately want to get guns out of law-abiding citizens' hands, but they don't punish gun thefts or gun users. You see, what are we voting for here? They believe, the DSA especially believe in no cops, no prisons, and high taxes so other people can just loaf. That's their belief. Whether it's achievable or not, it's the same if a radical right group said, oh, we're going to kick out all the immigrants and return all the black people to Africa. And they might not be able to do it, but it shows their intelligence or lack thereof. It shows what they think is a plan. Like Mandami here. He wants to open up grocery stores that are going to sell 30% below retail. This comes from Fortune magazine, talking about this initiative to lower living costs. But the real problem, see, Mandami likes to talk about food deserts where people have to travel 20 minutes to reach outlets. 20 minutes? I'm sorry, but if you live anywhere in Southern California, 20 minutes ain't shit. But these wounds are self-inflicted. The private grocery stores have a very hard time getting into New York, especially New York City, because back in the 70s, they passed some laws to try to keep manufacturing. Okay? So if you wanted to buy a bunch of land that used to be used like a factory. Let's say they had a factory. You want to knock the factory down. You want to put up a Walmart. Okay. And you're in a zone M, which is for manufacturing. You would have to go through a long process to try to convince government officials that this was the right thing to do. Well, doesn't always go according to plan. It's so extreme that there's I believe it's a Whole Foods here. Yeah, Whole Foods on Bedford Avenue that occupies 40,000 square feet of subterranean space because the law doesn't apply down there. Walmart has tried to come into parts of New York, but anything over 10,000, you have to get approval, and then some of the rich residents, the NIMBYs, activate and go to the city council and say, we don't want a Walmart here. We want mom and pop. And now Mandami is saying mom and pop is charging too much. Grocery stores operate at about a 2% margin. It's not very high. So what Mandami's plan is going to do is drive out other grocery stores. That's what they're going to do. It's going to be taxpayer funded because that's the only way that it's going to work. I mean, think about this. Grocery stores are making about 2 cents on every dollar. And this jackass is going to sell for 30% less than retail, which means these grocery stores that Mandami wants to open up are going to lose money on practically everything they sell. They're going to sell the staples. So now people will be able to get their staples, but the grocery stores, the big box stores, the Aldis that do exist there, they're the ones who are going to suffer. The rich people will keep going to the high-end ones, But then when the government run grocery store fails, what do you think is going to happen? Food desert all over again. Because you're going to drive out grocery stores. Right now they have a lot of CVS's that sell processed food and drugstores like that sell processed food because they're able to justify the costs, okay, of trying to work their way through city council and meet all their demands and all of that, because that's really how it works. You want to lower food prices, allow the Walmart supercenters in, allow the Aldi's in. But here's the flip side of it. You allow criminals to get away with everything. So if criminals are going to go into Aldi and steal all the shit, how long is Aldi going to be able to stay there? If you're only keeping 2 cents out of every dollar, how much theft is too much theft? And let's not forget that theft cuts also from employees. So if you're in a bad neighborhood, you're going to have a harder time finding good employees. I've seen it firsthand in the city of Long Beach. There was a Walmart there I've been going there for 8 years, and it's been vacant that entire time. And when I asked what it was all about, a lot of it was employee theft. It drove them out of business, and they never returned. And nobody has ever filled that vacancy because nobody wants to be in that neighborhood. When you have homeless encampments running in the alley beside your store, and you've got people passed out or taking a shit or pissing in front of your store, harassing customers, aggressive panhandling, crap like that, why would you want to open up a store there? That's why there's food deserts, because it's unprofitable. But subsidizing grocery stores without correcting the other problems. See, that's the biggest problem I have with the Democrat socialists out there. They want to blame everybody under the sun, big corporations, Donald Trump, whoever. But then they just want to leapfrog to, okay, we're going to open up stores and we're going to subsidize them and it's all going to be great. But you're not cleaning up the problem. And here's the story about these subsidized places, okay? Yes, food is going to be cheap, right? The story of super subsidized goods is what we've seen in places like Cuba. They sell out fast, leaving the late customers nothing to buy. The New York City grocery members will be severely pressed to keep shelves well stocked for items tagged almost a third lower than most other places. Milk, eggs, seafood, meat, that's gone. People are going to come in and snatch them up. And you know what's even worse? It's quite possible that it'll be rich people. And New York is full of Cuban immigrants who know exactly what's going to happen. And what? This time it'll be different? See, that's the problem. Instead of fixing the issues that lead here, they want to leapfrog to the things that sound sexy on paper. I'm going to lower grocery prices. Trump said it and failed. Mandami has said it and he will fail also. I'm tired of these politicians just making all these campaign promises that they know they can't keep. But we can at least look at what their platform is to see if they're intelligent. The Democrat Socialists of America is a cancer. James Carville, okay, he's one of the screaming memes on the left. He actually came out on his show and said to the DSA, why don't you get another name? Why are you dragging our names through the mud with your bullshit? If you don't like it, call yourself something else. He joked that the term Democratic can be appropriated even by tyrannical regimes, such as the Democratic Republic of North Korea. And that's the same thing that the Democratic Socialists are doing. If you're so against everything, then create your own name. Don't use our name. Don't be tainted. He went on to say, but I got to tell you, I hope voters in the primaries in Michigan and Wisconsin understand that you're not just voting for a nominee for Senate in Michigan. You're voting for a nominee and the image of an entire party. His main gripe is that these people want to abolish the police. How do you even deal with that kind of lunacy? Why would you want to elect people like that? Young people have an easy time falling for it. They have an easy time. The younger you are, the more inclined you are to blame others. At least that's been my experience. A lot of people I talk to are the same way. They realized that the mistakes they made were their own mistakes. And lots of people have had bad upbringings but overcome it. But what's going on now is these jackasses like Mandami come in with these highfalutin ideas, blaming everybody that the young people and the left already find sexy. Oh, blame corporations, boy, corporate greed, blame all this. The true problem is not corporations. It's government. That's what it is. The more bloated your government is, the more fucked up it is. There's really no other way to say it. One of these days I'm going to record an outro, but for now, I'm Kid Copious. I'm Purple State Party, and so are you. Keep on grinding, love one another, and when it gets too much, let the beat drop and dance it out.